here's the other issue, Tom, that really is critical at this point. The amount of disclosure that's coming, the amount of exoplanets, everything we deal with, okay? One thing that I was praying about one night about what else the Lucifer telescope is looking for. People automatically assume it's Planet X. I know in my Bible when New Jerusalem comes down out of heaven, could it be that they are also looking for that because they know the lateness of the hour, they know their prophecies, and that's one thing that terrifies them that they cannot control because it's under God's control? Have you ever considered that?
I missed part of what you said, Steve. Sorry.
Oh, I said, have you ever considered that the Vatican may be looking for New Jerusalem because they understand, in addition to Planet X and everything else, but it's interesting because obviously they know the lateness of the hour. Lucifer has deceived his followers that they're going to make war against God and defeat him. But the curiosity of the infrared spectrum, and I know a little bit about infrared, but the point being, is it not also, it troubles me, not that it troubles, it just puts me into one of those light switch moments that we talk about New Jerusalem coming down out of heaven, and that happens at a certain point. But what is it? I think they're looking for multiple, how should I say this, events. Now, you went on record, the Vatican guy said to you and Chris when you were at Mount Graham, we've got to wait for the fields to clear sometimes through our telescopes. Obviously, the higher the magnification, the smaller the field, for the UFOs to get out of the way. Could it also be, I'm just throwing this out, that being aware of the scriptures and being aware of the fight that's coming and their embracing of the fallen one and his followers, Lucifer and his followers, could it not be that too? In essence, what challenges them? Now, obviously they got the Hubble and everything, but they're fixed, and obviously they know about Planet X, so I'm just throwing that out there. Have you ever considered that?
Yeah, I was thinking about that not long ago. This whole thing with the Kepler star and the constellation Cygnus, where they're talking about it, maybe it's an alien megastructure. They don't know what it is, right?
Tom.
Some people saying maybe it's the Dyson sphere. But the thing that went through my head is, what if it's the New Jerusalem? And the other thing is, don't forget that the Scripture says about Satan, this thing is coming down, it's nearing the earth. What if it is the New Jerusalem? Remember what it says about Satan, that he knows that his time's coming to an end. He knows that he has but a few days, that there is a timing.
Hey, Tom, let's this is my favorite term. The bottom line that you want people to live with, or actually to leave with after reading, the last in the series, as you penned it with Chris, you guys co-wrote it, co-authored it, what is the most astonishing thing in Tom Horn's mind? Look, we talk about a lot of stuff, and we've covered so much territory. We're watching multi-dimensional chess game played out with the devil moving his pieces into place, and God already declared checkmate on the cross. But it's still the game is still, when I say the chess game, is still going to play out with eternal consequences. What is the most, if I would say to you, what is the most relevant, revelatory thing that God has opened up to you in the same context as when he gave you the understanding of the Pope's resignation? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and so there were people when we went to the break, and Doug asked if I could please make a commentary about the Dyson sphere issue, which I had raised. Let me do that real quickly, and then I'll sum this all up. I'll try to do it very quickly. Because actually this is connected to you too, Steve. This whole thing about the Vatican being the biggest duck in the puddle with regard to, controlling the flow of disclosure information for the world's religious communities around extraterrestrial intelligence and all of that kind of stuff, the coming of a final Roman emperor, the culmination, the concatenation, a prophecy from every angle. But then you had mentioned Stargate, which If people read the third book in this series, On the Path of the Immortals, which we'll give away free to the people listening to this program, if when they buy the book, The Final Roman Emperor, they put in the comments section, I heard John Hackman, that book is dealing exclusively with this idea that there are gateways of the earth, stargates, portals, doorways. They've opened in the past. They're prophesied to open once again. That is absolutely a part of prophecy. We don't have time tonight to go back and put all that puzzle together, which we've done on previous shows, but it absolutely is a part of prophecy. And when you see, Isaiah the prophet saying about the location of the Tower of Babel and Babylon, saying that in the last days a great voice is going to announce, "Open the gates, ye ruler, I give command, and I bring them." Gate, right? Plural. I bring them. Giants are coming to fulfill my wrath. We realize that most Christianity has been very educated in terms of biblical prophecy and about what is going to happen in the near future. There are gateways. They've opened before. They're going to open again. Okay. Having said all that, this whole thing about the Dyson sphere that we were talking about before the break, and the Kepler star, and the constellation Cygnus, and this deep mystery. You've got these astronomers, Bradley Schaefer, some others out there, they're talking about this mysterious star, and how it is dimming, and then it's brightening, and 16% each century. They can't figure it out at all. They've never seen anything like this in deep space. Is that, well, I'm not going to say is that the New Jerusalem. We were also talking about that. Is this something, though, that the Vatican is watching? Is it something they're observing? Some strange, bizarre activity in space? Well, for people that don't know what a Dyson sphere is, you can learn about this by going to Google and typing in the Templeton Foundation, which is a philanthropic organization. And what's strange is they're interested in genetics, and they're interested in transhumanism, and they're also interested in aliens, and they're interested in hybridizing humanity. So a lot of this stuff seems to be kind of spooky in the way it kind of all flows together. They've been funding a whole series of lectures at the Arizona State University calling Facing the Challenges of Transhumanism, Religion, Science, and Technology. And in 2009, they launched the Sophia Project about making contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. So a lot of weird stuff. You can Google all of it. But now there's another university that we suspect could be involved in the cover-up of a so-called alien presence, artifacts, whatever. And that's Penn State, or at least one of its well-known lecturers. And this is a story that goes all the way back to 2005. And I don't know if we've talked about this in any of the recent programs over the last few years, Steve, but you and I, wow, how far back does the Q files go? When did you stop doing the Q files?
Oh, that goes back a long way. You know, it sounds like we're both old guys talking about decades ago.
Well, we were doing a series of shows, and they were Q-file shows, because we still have them on tape. And suddenly there was this story that shot across the World Wide Web of a giant Leviathan-type creature. Now, you remember this? And they said it had been discovered in the polar ice of Franz Josef Land. Colossal being. They described it as having horns and dimension that protruded from its head. Incredible length, a body covered with a combination of fur. So you and I started investigating that story, including analyzing the audio and video files. And within days, you had actually tracked down a helicopter pilot. Is this starting to come back to you now?
Yeah, I remember that.
And the helicopter pilot who had flown over and filmed this so-called Leviathan video. And according to the pilot, it was all a ruse. Sony had created this docudrama hoax to virally promote the release of the new PlayStation 2 game called Shadow of the Colossus. So you went on with George Norrie, coast to coast, and said it was all just a ruse, no big deal, blah, blah, blah. I did not know that, so I was out there. I'm still trying to unearth something for Raiders News Network, which is today known as SkyWest TV. And I was out there suggesting we might have only scratched the surface, big mystery. When suddenly information came up that made me think that both of us had been part of a bait and switch to throw people off a legitimate recovery effort. Now, this goes to gateways. What we went to the break talking about, it goes to that. And Franz Joseph, among the most interesting, potentially telling pieces of that puzzle, was the senior lecturer in anthropology and American Studies at Penn State University by the name of P.J. Capellati. Just before the so-called hoax was perpetuated, this professor had actually been conducting archaeological studies for Penn State at Franz Joseph land, and he followed his research of the site by immediately advocating the need to establish international laws or treaties to preserve alien artifacts. So I'm not going to go into all that. We talk about some of that in the book Exo Vaticana. But it raised the question that Capellati's team had uncovered something in Franz Joseph land that had something to do with extraterrestrial, other worlds artifacts, because he was literally calling for the need to establish through the UN international laws and treaties to preserve alien artifacts on other worlds. We document that in Exo Vaticana. It's something that corresponds to artificial remains somewhere, elsewhere in the universe, whatever. Something big enough to employ, let's say, Sony to concoct a cover-up, something they had found. Well, in any case, I'm not going to go into this. I think I don't have enough time. Bottom line is Capellati wrote a book that was published after the fact in which he quotes me and you and says that there are people out there like Steve Quayle and Tom Horn, and they're trying to make this something more than what it is. But everything about it smells of a giant cover-up, if you will. And I think I talked so long I forgot the point that I was going to make. But there is something about this idea about gateways, Stargate. I remember when I released the book Nephilim Stargates, I did this whole series of shows on radio and television. By the way, if I remember what I was going to say about Capellati, I'll say it. But I was discussing this idea of supernatural portals, doorways, openings, and that how this was actually an ancient idea, that there are gateways between this world and other dimensions. And at one point on one of those programs, I remember I was being interviewed by J.R. Church and Gary Sturman, as a matter of fact, and it's probably still available on YouTube, in which I briefly raised this idea that Aleister Crowley and the Jet Propulsion Laboratory founder Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard of the Church of Scientology, how they had been working to try to open a gateway, a doorway, right? You're aware of that. I'm sure most of the people listening to this program probably aware of how they were trying to open a doorway into another universe. But there's something else here, and I want to bring this up because we're in this election year, and you've got Hillary Clinton and Trump that are probably going to be the two individuals facing off against each other in a very historic year that also sees potentially the arrival of the final Roman emperor. And so there's something here about Parsons and Hubbard.